This show is sponsored by Edge Media Network, the largest network of local LGBT news and entertainment publications in the world. Now, let's get on with the show. Get ready for the all-sassy, comical, abruptness you can't handle the truth conversations about LGBT issues, pop culture, reality TV, current events, and, well, anything else they want to talk about. Now, here are your hosts, Kim Style and K-Town.
It's Kim Style.
And it's K-Town. We have a great show planned for you today, don't we, babe?
Yes, we do. Welcome back. I have been waiting on this show for months.
Me too, babe. It's going to be great. I promise you that. We have Jane Elliott on the show today, and she's going to bless us with her presence and talk about racism in this country. And I have to say, I was a little nervous when I first talked to her. You know, I talked to her prior to today.
Yes.
And
I didn't have the privilege of talking to her yet.
I was shaking.
Really?
I was a little nervous. I had sweaty palms, you know, I'm not going to lie.
Well, honey, she's on your side.
I know she is.
Definitely.
But I was just a little nervous. And then, you know, she's like down to business, you know. I mean, she was like, I said, hey, this is, you know, K-Town from Same Sex Dialogue. And I'd like to talk to you about, you know, being on the show because, you know, she gave us her number to call, and you know, she was like, yes, go ahead. I mean, she was
she's
just
funny. She
funny. Was like,
you know what? I want to rephrase what I said when I said she's on your side.
Yes,
she's on the right side.
Absolutely, yes,
you know,
she is.
She's on whatever is right, and she's dogmatic about it, and that's why I have mad respect for this lady, and I cannot wait to talk to her today.
Yeah, me as well, babe. And you know, we first watched her together on a clip from Oprah Winfrey.
Right.
She really got a reaction out of the group when she was performing the blue eye, brown eye exercise.
It's truly amazing. I watched a clip of today, I guess it was on YouTube, where this girl, she played a video of Jane Elliott doing the brown eye, blue eyed experiment. And one girl, she was showing it to a friend of hers, and she said, wow, this lady's rough. But halfway through the experiment, she said, oh, she's making these people really think about what it's like to be a black person in America.
Absolutely. Yes, she is. And it doesn't feel good.
I'm sure.
It doesn't feel good. I have personally suffered that racism, you know what I'm saying, in my own life. And it doesn't feel good. Even as a young child, I didn't know what it was or what I was experiencing, but I talked to my mother about it, you know.
Right.
And, you know, she did her best to explain it to me. I still didn't understand, but I knew I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And
it can't feel good at any age.
No, it doesn't feel good at any age. And I know that when I first saw Roots, and I was absolutely upset about it. You know, even as a young child, I cried so bad and I was so angry at the treatment of slaves. You know, they were getting beaten and called the N-word. You know, it was just horrible to me.
Right.
And my mother wouldn't allow me to watch it after that, but it did invoke strong emotion in me.
I'm sure. You know what? It does in me, and I haven't had to deal with racism.
Yes. I know, honey. But, you know, I mean, I know that you have been around it at some point in your life.
Oh, yeah. I was raised in a very small town. I didn't actually see black people till I was probably 14 years old.
Yes.
Honestly.
Yeah, I know.
And then I married one.
I'm down with you.
Yeah.
You know what? I told you about our friend had the experience. You know, she's actually a property manager. And the guy came into the office, and so she was white, and he was wanting a place for, you know, his family to stay. But he had assumed because she was white, he would just talk about how he didn't want to be around the blacks, if there were any in that community.
Okay.
He didn't know she had a black girlfriend.
Basically a black wife of like 20 years.
Went off on him.
As she should have.
She went off on him. He left that office real quick.
Good.
But he just assumed she was white and he was going to be, she was going to be okay with the language that he was using towards, black people, and he
and the racist remarks.
Right, racist remarks, right. And she just didn't deal with it and tolerate it for 1 second.
Yeah.
And that's how she's always been. Oh. She's always been that way.
Good for her.
And you guys will really love what Jane Elliott has to say. I promise you, you're going to see how much emotion she has about this, and how it's a mission for her.
Yeah. Back to our friend in the apartment complex. I will tell you, as far back as I can remember about myself personally, no matter if it was in my family or in my community, I can vouch for myself. Toot toot. But I have always had a huge piece of my heart for black people, because I could see how they were treated as the first time I ever saw them. Right. And I was in school, and I thought, these are people just like me. They just have more. I didn't realize the word pigment. I didn't know that, but it's a chemical in your skin. And I just thought, why are people the way they are? And so I guess I had a bigger heart even for them because of the way that they were treated.
Right.
But I didn't have the cojones that Jane Elliott has to stand up for them.
Her story is absolutely amazing.
I will tell you, just from listening to her interviews and seeing her on Oprah, she was on the Oprah show years ago, and she has been on Where Are They Now? And just knowing what I know about her and hearing what she has to say, I will never stand and let someone say anything racist to me. I never have anyway, and people that know me wouldn't do it anyway. But I will never, no matter who it is, let someone speak racism in my presence.
That's right. About anybody of any race.
Right.
Absolutely. It is dead wrong to do it. And, of course, if it were a part of anybody's life that we had anything to do with, we wouldn't have anything to do with it.
That's right.
To begin with. We don't want it.
And it's not because I'm just married to you. I've always felt this way. What's funny is I heard a story about Maya Angelou one time, and she was having a dinner party, and someone was saying some racial and sexual jokes. And you know who Maya Angelou?
Yes, of course.
You have to live in a cave or under a rock to not know who that lady is. Well, she went over to her, her company that was speaking these horrible words or jokes. And she said, I'd like for you to gather your belongings and see yourself out my door and never come back to my home.
They were saying things about homosexuals when she said that.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. She told them to leave.
Oh, I love that lady.
I love her too.
She truly was an angel on earth, like Mother Teresa.
She was. She really was. Just like Jane Elliott. We cannot wait to talk to her. You guys will not believe it. She will change your life. Listen to her journey and the things that she has done. She will absolutely change your life. All right. So now I want to real quick thank Edge Media Network for sponsoring our show. I encourage you guys to go over to edgemedianetwork.com. They do have an app for Android and iOS. It is the only app you will need if you ever want to share any articles on any of your social media outlets. Great. You just one click, you can share it on everything. Hook it up to Hootsuite or Buffer and let it go. So the largest network of LGBT publications in the world, Edge Network. Also, we want to tell you guys, please go over to our website to download and keep our shows on your phone. You can also share those with your family, your friends, anybody that you think will enjoy our shows. It's just very convenient to do that. The sound quality is going to be amazing. I want to also tell you guys, please bear with us. We are having some of our mysterious radio shows go over into same-sex dialogue in iTunes. I will have that corrected. If you enjoy those shows, I encourage you to listen to them. I mean, they have been maxed out in popularity.
That's
so
crazy,
people must love it too.
That is
but
great.
That has been happening by accident. We do not want that. We're trying to get that fixed, so bear with us, okay? Now, also, if you're interested in advertising, please contact JK Media Agency. If you want to do that with us, we'll be more than happy to team up with you and put out some great promotions for you or your company.
And we want to thank our top cities of the week.
All right.
Ipswich, Massachusetts. Woohoo! Forest Hills, New York, and New York City, New York. I know y'all loving this country girl down here because I'm loving y'all. Yes, we are.
I'm done. I'm loving this country girl. All right, so let's get on with some news. So for the news, I have, of course, this has been reported from Edge Media Network. We love them.
Of course, yes, we do.
Anti-gay pastor who said post victims got what they deserve was arrested for child molestation.
Imagine that.
A controversial Georgia pastor who came under fire for tweeting the victims of the post-gay club attack in Orlando, Florida, got what they deserved, turned himself into authorities Friday on charges of aggravated child molestation and child molestation. The allegations against Kenneth Atkins, 56, who also doubles as a political consultant, imagine that, come from a young male former member of his congregation. He is now getting what he deserves.
Absolutely. Amen, brother. Unbelievable.
All right.
Unbelievable.
It really is. Honestly, I'm speechless at that, honestly. All right. And also, the man that was charged with throwing scalding hot water on a gay couple was sentenced to 40 years in prison this week. But it also said the FBI won't pursue hate crime charges.
Seriously?
Yes, I can't believe it. The two U.S. representatives said Friday that Blackwell should face a federal trial anyway, since Georgia lacks a hate crime law.
That's terrible.
I do not know why they won't pursue a hate crime when it clearly is.
Absolutely. You know, if someone intentionally pours scalding water on you, it's a hate crime, whether you're gay or not.
Right.
That's just from pure hate.
And then he says, get out of here with that gayness or something like that.
That was a hate crime.
It was
Absolutely.
a hate crime. It's black and white, and it's, you know, it's no doubt that it was. It just angers me that they won't pursue it as a hate crime. All right. Now, I'm looking at you, looking at me, looking so good.
Yes.
And I know you have a Kim Queery. Right, let's hear it.
Dear Kim, I am a lipstick lesbian. I was wondering, because this happens to me often, do straight girls want to experiment with you also? Candace from Sacramento, California. Well,
Lord.
Candace, as a matter of fact, when straight girls do find out that I'm a lesbian, yes, for some reason, which, first of all, straight girls are not my thing at all. I mean, people will tell me, without my consent or anything, Kim, if I was going to be with a lesbian, it would definitely be you. Really? Do I have no say-so in the matter? I'm serious. There were a lot of girls. I've heard this all my lesbian life. Kim, if I was going to be with any girl, it'd be you. Really?
I know. It's really insulting because
it really is. I'd be smacking you.
You're not my type.
No. And what are we going to do? Each other's nails and makeup? I wouldn't know what to do with that. But yes, Candace, to answer your question, yes, that does happen to me. Just try to deal with it tactfully and maybe jokingly. That's what I do. But yes, that does happen to me often.
Well, remember the girl came up to you and asked you, she flashed you? Or
oh, yes. I think we talked about this one time.
Yeah.
This girl in the club, she's decked out like I deck out in high heels and, low cut, whatever. She says, I want you to check out my tatas. That's what I call them. That's not what she calls them. But I said, I don't like those. I like your shoes. What size do you wear?
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had this one girl what I thought straight as an arrow. She dropped her keys. Well, out of just being nice, I was just going to reach down and get her keys for her. Uh-huh. So I reached down, picked up her key, was picking up her keys, and she said, while you're down there, I was like, no. I'd never looked at her in that way at all.
Well, baby, you know what? It's for some reason, straight females think that all lesbians are attracted to any woman they see.
Yeah.
And it's not that way. We have a preference. Mm-hmm. we have standards.
And we have a type.
We have a type. That's right. We have a type. And my type isn't every woman I see.
Right.
And you know that I had overheard a conversation at work one time. I had to say something. There was 2 women. Well, where I worked, we were, working in it was like a place where, had a lot of coal and things like that. So we get very dirty. Mm-hmm. We couldn't bring it home to our family. We had to take a shower, right?
Stop it. You're turning me on.
We had to take a shower. And so I was in there, 2 other ladies and another lady that I knew was a lesbian, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the one lady, she says, I don't want to get undressed because I don't want her to see me.
Talking about you?
No.
The other girl, because she was a lesbian, right?
Right.
Okay.
And so there was another lady, that was a white lady. There was another black lady that said, oh, I know what you mean. I don't want her looking at me either,
Oh, please. Come on.
I'm over in the next aisle, so they don't really know I'm in there.
Okay.
The woman that was a lesbian was in the shower, right?
Right.
I heard her say that it ran all over me.
I know it did because I know you.
I went around.
What'd you say?
I went around there and I told her, I said, listen, I don't think she's attracted to every woman she sees. Mm-hmm. And they were quiet. They never said another word. They got dressed and left. But it just pissed me off because they assumed because she's a lesbian, she's going to want you over there looking like a busted can of biscuits.
Oh, Lord.
She doesn't want you.
You're funny.
I mean, seriously.
That's how straight women think. A lot of straight guys think that too. They think
every gay man wants them.
Yeah.
No, boo.
Yeah, no. Mm-mm. It's not that way at all, straight people.
It's not.
Oh, back to Candace. Candace, yes, that does happen to me. And it happens to me often. They think that they have a chance with me. And a lot of straight women are just curious for that one experience.
Right.
I'm not the girl. I'm not the one.
That's right.
Yeah. So I don't know what to tell you except for I just try to jokingly handle it. And sometimes I even laugh it off and say, you're not my type.
Awesome, babe.
Yeah. But you know what, Candace? Be you, be true, and be fabulous.
All right. So now we're going to get on with our interview with Jane Elliott. Jane Elliott is an American former third grade school teacher, anti-racism activist, and educator, as well as a feminist and LGBT activist. She is known for her Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes exercise. She first conducted her famous exercise for her class the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was shot, when her local newspaper published compositions that the children wrote about the experience. The reactions, both positive and negative, formed the basis for her career as a public speaker against discrimination. After leaving her school, Elliott became a diversity educator. She still holds the exercise and gives lectures about its effects all over the U.S. and in several locations overseas.
Now I want to welcome Miss Jane Elliott.
All right, so we have Miss Jane Elliott on the line. How you doing, ma'am?
I'm doing just fine.
Great. We are very honored to have you on the show. We have been watching many of your videos. They really hit home for me because as a child, I have experienced racism before really I knew what it was. And I just remember telling my mom about some things that have happened to me while I was with her. I want to just run this by you, and it's just wrong, and it's disheartening to have it happen to you. But I remember when I was around like probably about 10 years old, I had a toothache, and my mom used to go clean offices in Kentucky, so we used to have to cross the mountains so she can do her job, and we stopped at a store. I went in to get some oral gel. And my mom sat outside and wait. She would wait on me to do that. And then I went in there to get it. And there was an older gentleman. I would say he was probably in his 60s, I would say. And I remember him following me all over that store. Okay, every aisle that I was in, he was in that aisle. Okay, he was literally following me everywhere in that store, and all I wanted to get is some oral gel. I come out of the store and told my mom, I said, this man was following me everywhere, and I don't know why he was doing that. She said, honey, it's just the way they are up here. But I have had that happen to me even in my adult life when I was, I made plenty of money. I'm faced with racism. So I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to take up this huge endeavor on educating people on racism?
I didn't have a way to explain the killing of Martin Luther King Jr. to my third graders in all white, all Christian Riceville, Iowa. And I found out the first day of that exercise, I didn't know what to do. So we were studying an Indian unit at the time, that famous Indian unit that you do in the spring to keep the kids from wanting to get outside. And we were learning the Sioux Indian prayer that says, "Oh, Great Spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I've walked a mile in his moccasins." Martin Luther King Jr. had been one of our heroes of the month in February, and he was dead at the hands of an assassin in April, and I had to explain that to third graders in all white, all Christian Riceville, Iowa. I didn't know how to do it. So as I was watching people like Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather interview leaders of the black community the night after Martin Luther King Jr.'s death, I was so appalled at the questions they were asking. Walter Cronkite said to three leaders of the black community, when our leader was killed, his widow held us together. Who's going to keep your people in line? And I told him, oh my God, does he not realize what he just said to these men? Evidently he didn't. Then I changed the channel. I thought, I don't have to listen to this, so here's Dan Rather. And he said to three black males, don't you Negroes think that you should feel sympathy for us white people during this experience because we can't feel the anger at this killing that you Negroes can?
Oh, my.
And that did it. That was the bullet that killed Father. I decided at that moment that not only was I going to teach my students that Sioux Indian prayer the next morning, I was going to arrange to have it answered for them. I decided that the next morning I was going to put my students in a situation where they would live for a day, just for a day, with a little bit of what black students live with every day in this country.
Right.
I decided I was going to do what we do in this society. I was going to pick out a group of people on the basis of a physical characteristic over which they have absolutely no control. I was going to assign negative traits to them because of that physical characteristic, and that physical characteristic alone. I was going to treat them as though all the things I was saying about them were true. I was going to lower my expectations for them. When they lived down to their expectations, as they would, I was quite certain I was going to blame their inability to learn on that physical characteristic. That's how racism works. It has worked in this country for only 500 years. People who think that racism has always been around are wrong. A group of ignorant scientists, after the Spanish Inquisition, invented this kind of racism. You need to realize, everybody has to read Robert Wald Sussman's book, The Myth of Race. You have to read it so that you'll know that you have been disgustingly and consistently lied to for 500 years. There is no black race. There is no white race. There's no yellow race. There's no red race. There is only the human race. All these other designations that we have come up with are color groups. They are not races. But if you can create the idea in people's heads and constantly reinforce it that these are different races, then you can maintain your power in the system. What I learned that day was so ungodly that I've never forgotten it, and I want everybody else to find out what I learned that day. Because the first thing I learned, I told my students, blue-eyed students, my students, that brown-eyed people are smarter than blue-eyed people. And immediately, little brown-eyed Debbie, sitting in the front row of the classroom, said, "How come you're the teacher here if you got them blue eyes?" And instead of correcting her for her bad grammar, I took it personally. I was furious at her for saying that to me. Later in the day, when I pulled down the map and the ring slipped off my thumb, the map went around and around and around the ruler with the way it does that horrible flapping noise. I said, "Well, I've done it again." And once again, little brown-eyed Debbie said, "Well, what do you expect? You've got blue eyes, haven't you?"
Oh,
that's the way.
Wow.
That's the way that day went. I found out, watching my brown-eyed kids, how I look to people of other color groups. And at that moment, I decided I would never look that way to people of other color groups again. I will never behave the way those kids behaved that day. I was and this is the horror of it. I was the authority figure in that classroom.
Right.
And as long as I said these ugly things, they must be true.
Wow.
Now, we've got a man running for the presidency today in this country who says those ugly things on a daily basis. And half the members of the Republican Party are with him.
Unbelievable.
Which is it's a horrible statement about our uncivilized civilization. It's just unbelievable that these crazies, that he is playing to these crazies. He knows what he's doing. He knows why he's doing it. And he knows how to do it.
Right. Him running and people supporting him, it's an insult to us, actually.
Well, of course, it's not only an insult. It's not only an insult to people of other color groups. It's an insult to the white color group. It's a terrible comment on what kind of people we are.
Right.
It denies everything that we have said we are. This is insane. I have never. This is like being in the third grade classroom with a teacher saying you're better because you're of the right color group. You have the right color eyes. He's saying that you're better because you have the right color skin.
Absolutely.
And I watched kids who couldn't learn, who were dyslexic. I had 7 dyslexic boys in my room that year. 4 of them were brown-eyed. On the day they were on the top in that exercise, they read words I knew they couldn't read, and they spelled words I knew they couldn't spell. And the only thing that had changed was now they had magic eyes and they could do anything. It was unbelievable. And I know anybody listening to this is thinking, oh, she's hysterical. It didn't really happen. It did really happen. And people need to realize that if you lower your expectations of people and you're the authority figure and you set them up to fail, they will fail. Right. And they and everybody around them will blame their failure not on how you set them up, but on that physical characteristic over which they have no control. And until people get over the idea of, somebody will say to me, well, I have biracial children. And I say, what planet did their father come from?
Yeah.
Because if their father and their mother both came from planet Earth, they aren't biracial. They are mosaic children. I love something new that's made out of many different elements. but they are not biracial.
Right.
They are mosaic, and they are members of the human race.
I love
and until white people get it into their heads that every human being on this earth is as good as every other human being on this earth, that skin color does not designate, does not determine or indicate intelligence or value. Until we get that into our heads, we're going to continue to be an ignorant uncivilization.
Absolutely. Jane, will you please talk about, I remember hearing you talk about this little girl that was in your class, and when you told her you were doing the brown-eyed, blue-eyed experiment on them, and you said she was bright, she was one of the smartest kids you had ever taught, but when you put her in the category of, I think it's the brown-eyed,
she fell apart. She was blue-eyed. She came into my class in February, reading at the 6th grade level. She had a steel-trapped mind. She's absolutely brilliant. Carol was absolutely brilliant until the day she had the wrong color eyes. And she had never multiplied. I taught her how to multiply the first 15 minutes of math class, the first day she was in my classroom. She never made a mistake in math again until the day she had the wrong color eyes. And on that day, that child disintegrated in front of my very eyes. She walked with her shoulders hunched as if to ward off an expected blow when she went across walked across the classroom. She made mistakes in spelling. She made mistakes in reading, and she forgot how to multiply.
Wow.
She came in from recess crying. I said, "What's going on here?" As she walked across the playground, 2 brown-eyed Debbies and a brown-eyed Cindy stepped up behind her. One of them reached up, struck her across the back with her forearm, and when Carol turned around, Debbie said to her, "Now you have to apologize to me for getting in my way, because I'm better than you are." And Carol apologized and came in crying. That would never have happened in my classroom if I had not introduced racism based on eye color into my classroom. And what is happening between people of all color groups in this country and the white color group, what is happening among us and between us is because white people deliberately introduce racism onto this continent in order to gain power and to have power and to have an excuse for their power and for their horrible, horrible use of power. There is no reason for people to hate one another on the basis of skin color. Because when somebody says to me, "Well, he dislikes me because of the color of my skin," I say, no. That isn't the reason he dislikes you. He dislikes you because of his ignorance. Your skin color is not the problem. I say your skin color is natural, and so is his ignorance. However, you can change ignorance. You must.
Right.
You don't have to change. You can't change skin color, and you shouldn't have to.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, so don't ever let somebody say, "Well, they dislike me because I'm black." No, they dislike you because they're ignorant. It's not your fault. It's their fault.
Absolutely.
They need to make a different choice.
That's right. Jane, are you still teaching your exercise today?
Yes, I don't do the exercise very often because we're in a lawsuit-happy society right now. Everybody wants to sue, and corporations are reluctant to have those kind of legal bills. So I do a lot of speeches about the exercise, and I don't do the exercise with people who have to work together on a regular basis because blue-eyed white folks, blue-eyed white males get even. They don't forget. They don't get over it. We say to people of other color groups, "Why don't you just get over it?" when it's happened to them 5 minutes before.
Right.
But when a blue-eyed white male goes through that exercise for an hour and a half, he doesn't get over it for the rest of his life. Some of them stay. One man was angry at me until he died, and I did the exercise with him in 1968. And he was still angry 20, 30 years later. It really got kind of comical.
That is kind of funny.
Yeah, he'd see me coming toward him on the street, and he'd turn and go the other way or across the street or something, so he wouldn't have to see my face.
Did you have any idea that what you did the day back in April 1968 would have such an impact, and still an impact today? Did you have any idea?
Oh, my God, no. I had no idea that I would be damned for the rest of my life because of that exercise. I had no idea that it was going to get out of my classroom. It wasn't supposed to get out of my classroom. That was a classroom experience strictly for my students. I didn't do it to be famous. I didn't do it to change the world. I didn't intend for that to get out of my classroom.
Yeah.
But it did get out because my kids went home and talked about it. And teachers were furious. And a friend and I had my students write letters, not letters, but essays after the exercise was over. We ran it on Friday, and then on Monday, we reversed it on Monday. Then on Tuesday, they wrote 4-paragraph compositions telling who Martin Luther King Jr. was, how the child felt on Friday, how the child felt on Monday, and what discrimination is. When they had finished their essays, we got in a circle, and if they wanted to share their essays, they could. They all wanted to share their essays. So I showed those. I couldn't have written them. If I had scripted them, I couldn't have written them better than they did. And the things that they expressed were just fine. And proved that learning had taken place. I showed those to my mother, and she showed them to the editor of the local paper. He printed them in the paper, and somebody sent that article to the Johnny Carson Show. And the Johnny Carson Show called and asked if I would be on the Johnny Carson Show. And then all hell broke loose. It was bad before that. But after the Johnny Carson Show, I became a pariah in my own hometown.
Wow.
My great-grandparents were some of the first settlers in that community. And I became I found out how it feels to be the invisible man. I didn't talk to another adult from 7:30 in the morning until 4:30 in the afternoon, because nobody in that school would talk to me, because if you were seen talking to me, that meant that you might be like me. So everybody talked. I found out how it feels to be shunned, and I didn't think I'd done anything wrong, but I guess I had.
Jane, I wanted to ask you, at what age did you realize, if you grew up in a racially charged environment, sounds like you did, at what age did you realize racism existed? And did you know at that time it was wrong?
Oh, well, my dad said, he had 7 children. We had 7. I had 6 brothers and sisters. And my dad said, never judge a book by its cover, by God. And he said, a fair thing's a pretty thing, and a right wrongs no man. But he also said, don't be bringing any pickaninnies into my house as grandchildren. And I thought, oh, my God, this man that I thought was the most moral man in the world, because he had acted as if he were, he lived what he believed. But he made that statement. And I went back to college that week after that weekend and talked to my roommate, Marilyn Alcorn, and said, I can't believe my dad said that. And she said, why? Hasn't he ever said anything like that before? And she looked at me like I was some kind of a nutcase. And I realized that what he said was acceptable. And I couldn't accept it. I knew he was wrong. And then when I went to college, I saw blacks who were smarter than I was, who had a whole lot more money than I did, who were more socially apt than I was. And I figured I'd been lied to for a whole lot of years. And that's when I began to realize that if I'm going to be, at that time we were called teachers, I decided I wouldn't just be a teacher, I'd be an educator. The word educator comes from the root duc dus, which means lead, the prefix e, which means out, the suffix ate, which means the act of, and the suffix or, which means one who does. So an educator isn't just a teacher. Teachers teach facts and figures they can pass. The kids can pass the standardized tests. I decided I would be an educator. An educator is somebody who is engaged in the act of leading people out of ignorance. And so the first 2 years I taught, I was young and foolish and innocent and didn't make waves. And then I got married, had 4 kids, went back to teaching, and realized after having lived in Waterloo, Iowa for several years, how badly blacks were being treated, that it was my job as an educator to lead my kids out of ignorance. So I tried to do that by talking about it. They didn't learn a thing when I was talking about it. They just regurgitated what they thought I wanted to hear. And then Martin Luther King Jr. was dead. And I can't talk about that or think about that without getting sick to my stomach.
Right.
Because he was our hero, one of our heroes of the month in February. He was dead in April, and I had to explain that to 3rd graders. There's no way to explain this. You can't talk it away, and you can't talk it into intelligence. You can't talk away ignorance. You have to experience. You have an experience that will teach you why what's happening is wrong.
Right.
Yes, ma'am. Can you tell us, what you loved most about him? And I know it really invokes emotion upon you when you talk about it. But what did you love most about him, and what change do you see that he would have brought upon our country? If
he had lived another 2 years, he and Malcolm X had begun to join forces. They were about to join forces. Malcolm X was about actively defeating this mess. Martin Luther King Jr. was about doing it nonviolence. But they were getting closer and closer together. And the government obviously knew that they were getting closer and closer together. And after the Poor People's March on Washington, which included a whole lot of white folks who were poor, the government knew they had a force that they wouldn't be able to reckon with. Right. And they knew they had to do something and do it quickly. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Malcolm X's people killed him, and my people, quite frankly, killed Martin Luther King Jr. James Earl Ray couldn't possibly have planned that all by himself. The thing that I admired most about Martin Luther King Jr. was the fact that he wasn't all about making life better for blacks. He knew that as long as we perpetuated this insanity of racism, whites could never really be free. He was about freeing everybody, not just blacks.
Right. Absolutely.
What do you see the biggest problem is in our educational system when it comes to race?
Oh, teachers, the people who are at the head of the classroom, the head of the building, the head of the school, are people who have been indoctrinated for from 15 to 22 to 25 years with the same thing that we are indoctrinating students with now, the myth of white superiority. When you have a member of the legislature, I believe Steve King is a member of the House of Representatives, isn't he, in Western Iowa? And that miserable creep last week said, no people, no black people, no colored folks, or words to that effect, have ever contributed anything valuable to civilization. White people have done all the contributions to civilization. Oh, my God.
Oh,
do you realize how ignorant? Yes. Do you realize? Oh, my God. Well, see, if he said, oh, my God, he would think of an old white man in a long gray beard who looks like Charlton Heston playing Moses.
Right.
and he would see Jesus who looks like a little Pillsbury Doughboy.
Exactly.
Because we have to have somebody that we can relate to who looks like us.
Right.
So we have even changed God into an old white man with a long gray beard. And God is a spirit and has neither color nor gender. Get over it, people.
Exactly.
But we white folks have managed to, that's one of the major differences between members of the white group and other color groups. When white people come into a new environment, they immediately adjust the environment to fit their needs. When people of other color groups come into a new environment, they immediately adjust their needs to fit the environment.
Yes.
We've even done that with God and with Jesus and the Holy Family. Mary was a Jewess. She was born in the Middle East. She couldn't have had blonde hair and pale skin and blue eyes. Come on, give me a break here.
But isn't that convenient?
Yeah.
It's just, this is the kind of thing we indoctrinate people to be good Americans instead of educating people to lead them out of ignorance to make them good citizens of the world.
Right.
It isn't enough to be a good American, because if you're a good American, you have to believe this nonsense that Columbus discovered America. Now, you can't discover a place where people are already living. They discovered it before you got there.
Absolutely.
Very, very
we
true.
teach this kind of claptrap, and it just tickles me to death every time I see one of these guys that I know, one of these truckers, go through Osage. Great big truck and a great big man and lots of power behind him, and he stops at the stoplight. And I think if you knew that your behavior right now is being controlled by an invention that was developed with the help of a black man, you'd go through that damn light.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So true, though. So
it
true.
When I see these white women with their high heels and their fancy shoes going down the street looking good, I think if you realized that you wouldn't have shoes that fit both your left foot and your right foot if it hadn't been for the work of a black man, Jan Ernst Matzeliger, who invented the first blast for making shoes mechanically so that you could have a left foot and a right foot shoe.
Yeah, right.
If they knew that, they'd stop wearing shoes.
Yes.
Or they'd say she's lying about that. That didn't really happen. Because we have to discount everything that people of other color groups contributed in order to feel good about white folks.
I definitely have found that. I have experienced that. Yep.
Miss Elliott, I want to ask you.
It's ridiculous.
I know.
That's what.
Go ahead.
That's what I think that's what Martin Luther King Jr. was about. Let's educate everyone so that nobody is this ignorant any longer.
And that's what it is ignorance. I wanted to ask you, what do you say to parents that are right now teaching their children to be racially superior?
I say whether they are black, white, brown, red, or yellow, I say to them, you're teaching your child a lie. You're teaching your child to you're causing prejudice in your child. You're teaching your child to discriminate. You're teaching your child a lie. Skin color is not an indication of anything except the color of your skin, the amount of chemical in your skin. It has nothing to do with your brain. You need to teach your child the truth. You need to teach your child that we are all human beings on this earth, and we are not created equal. Yeah, in the eyes of God, if you believe in God, we're all equal. But I don't work with God all day, every day. I work with fallible human beings who do not see us as all equal, because we aren't. I have a feeling that you're younger than I am, that you're prettier than I am, that you know more about blacks than I will ever know. You've forgotten more since breakfast than I will ever know about racism. However, while you and I aren't equals, we are guaranteed, in the Constitution of the United States, we are guaranteed equitable treatment under the law. And that's why you have to be very careful about how you vote in November, because the folks that you're voting for are going to write and pass and they are going to make us follow those laws. They're going to enforce those laws. So you have to be very, very careful this year about how you vote, because we are all stuck on we're stuck on the petard of our own ignorance right now. Parents have to tell their children, skin color does not determine your worth or your intelligence.
Absolutely. Jane, I would like for you to talk about how you were isolated when you came out with your experiment of the blue eye, brown eye back in 1968. I mean, even with your family, I've heard about you were disowned, your family lost their business, teachers wouldn't talk to you, and then something happened with your mother. Can you talk about that today?
Well, after my father died, my mother kicked me out of the family. She called me and said, "Don't come over here anymore. Nobody's comfortable when you're around. You stay away from here. And you've embarrassed the whole family with that blue-eyed, brown-eyed thing. And we've lost our reputation in Riceville because of your exercise." And I thought, this is a town of 1,000 people. How much reputation could you lose? And I actually laughed after she kicked me out of the family. I thought, well, the rest of my brothers and sisters won't go along with this. They did.
Oh,
they
wow.
Unbelievable.
My sisters didn't. They never again after that. I think they called me one time and asked me to come over. The rest of the time, nobody stopped at my house. Nobody came near me because they all believed that what my mother said was right. And I don't know what story she told them to explain why I wasn't there, but I never explained it. I tried to explain it to my older sister, and she said, I wasn't there when it happened, so I can't be sure you're telling the truth. And that did it for me.
Okay.
I thought, okay, I'm telling the truth, and this is what Mom did. And I had made her uncomfortable because when I first did the exercise, I took those essays, and on the first day of the exercise, I went up and told her what was going on in my classroom, and she said, "Jane, you better be careful. You don't want to end up where Aunt Eunice did." I said, "Well, where did Aunt Eunice end up?" In a mental institution, because what I was talking about sounded insane.
Exactly.
And she refused to admit that that I had created a microcosm of society in my third grade classroom. And if that's a microcosm of society and it sounds insane, then this society is indeed insane.
Absolutely.
We're a bunch of nutcases.
Agree.
We obviously believe in the myth of white superiority. And it's a lie. It's all a lie. About 2 months ago, I did not an exercise. I gave a speech at a college in California. And when I was done, I was standing out in the hall with these kids who wanted to do selfies. Oh, they were so excited. Yeah, okay. So we had finished with the selfies, and this young man came down the hall with his arms outstretched to the heaven as if in an attitude of prayer. It was just fantastic. It seemed like he was about 3 feet up, maybe a foot and a half off the ground. He was so excited. And he was shouting. He said, Elliott, I've got to talk to you. I said, yeah, well, what do you need? He said, I want to thank you. I said, for what? He said, you just made me freer than I've ever been in my life. I don't have to live up to that superior business anymore. I can relax and be what I am.
Good.
And
that's great.
Yeah, and this young black man standing there said, and I don't have to live down to their expectations. I don't have to live down to their expectations either. I can free to be what I am.
Awesome.
And I thought, damn, if I died today, and I literally thought, if I died today, I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
Because here are two young men who have made it obvious that I haven't lived in vain and that I've accomplished something.
Absolutely.
Neither of them had to say that. It wasn't scripted. It was just, they were both just absolutely tickled to death that now it was all right to be what they were.
Miss
And
Elliott,
what they were was not equal human beings, but human beings who were guaranteed equitable treatment under the law.
That's right. That's right. What has been the overall, reaction to blacks that have seen your film or participated in your exercise?
Well, first, when they come into the exercise, it's obvious, and I know what's going on. I've done this often enough that they're thinking, and one of them said, well, this is just another honky bitch playing her games. And I thought, yeah, you're right. You're right. That's exactly what I am. That's exactly what I am. There ain't no doubt about that. I am a honky bitch and I'm playing my games. Now, some people get really upset if they hear the word bitch applied to them. Yeah. It doesn't bother me. Bitch is an acronym for being in total control, honey.
Ooh, I love it. I'm going to write that down. Being in total control, honey.
Being in total control, honey. And if you don't want it to be sexist, you just say being in total control here. But the total control is what kills them. When you're in control with a noun man, particularly white man, when you're in control, you get called a bitch. That's automatic. And when they say that to me, I say, you're out of control, aren't you, darling? Ooh. So I can take care of that for you. And then I whip out my Lorena Bobbitt fruit knife. No, I don't whip out my Lorena Bobbitt fruit knife. But I could take care of it. You better not put that on the air. But I couldn't take care of their problem.
That's
because
funny.
Well, it really is, because they don't realize what it is they're saying. They don't realize how I'm taking it. I'm supposed to be absolutely destroyed by that.
Right.
I'm supposed to be really scared. I'm supposed to be really sorry that they don't love me. No. Those things aren't what are happening for me at that moment. What happens to me is I'm seeing somebody who's weak and who is scared and who is feeling like a child, because I'm being in my parent state at that point, and so he has to go into his child ego state, and so he becomes a child. It's just remarkable to watch it happen. And when I do the exercise, because I know a little bit about transactional analysis, the exercise works, and it works because, for instance, Donosaurus T. Rump spends most of his time in his child ego state. You watch him, and those are all childlike behaviors and childlike words. Yes. And if he isn't in his child ego state, he's in his parent ego state when he's giving orders. You never see him in his adult ego state. He said, I don't think he knows how to be an adult. He knows how to either be a child or a parent, but he doesn't know how to be an adult. It's just fascinating.
He's like
I get a lot of stuff.
He's like an only child brat, is what he's like.
And he wants his way, and he wants it now.
Absolutely.
And I think, well, Sonny, this is a big playground, and there's lots of people on it, and I'm sorry, but you aren't the big man on this playground. Yeah. But that's what he wants to be. I'm just really sorry that those other. I'm not sorry that one of them dropped out, but I'm sorry that the other 15 dropped out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, and that's the Republicans' fault. They should have gone after that. They should have been determined not to have that man representing the Republican Party, because he doesn't represent the Republican Party. He represents the lunatic fringe.
Totally agree.
Miss Elliott, the first time I ever learned about you is I saw a video of you, and you were in the front of a crowd. It looked to be all white people, and you said, I want you to stand up. If everyone stand up that is okay with how black people are treated.
No, I said, if you're white and you'd like to spend the rest of your life being treated the way white people and people of other colors in this country are treated, please stand. And I've done it dozens and dozens of times. Nobody stands.
Right.
Nobody stands. One time, one woman stood up, and she had, piercings all over, and she stood up. And I said, why are you standing? She said, well, I know what you're trying to do. I said, sit down.
Because she would not want to be treated that way, period.
Of course she wouldn't, but she wanted to look. She wanted to make a hippie statement. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say a hippie statement, but she wanted to make a statement like people made in the 60s. But those young people in the 60s were really determined and dedicated and want to make change.
Right.
Yes.
She was probably 50 years old. She's probably 45. And she didn't want to make change. She wanted attention. She was playing Look at Me. Well, when I taught third grade and when I taught junior high, you don't play Look at Me. Look at Me is what people do when they abuse people at football games, when they abuse the coach from the sidelines, when they abuse the comedian in a lounge. They're playing Look at Me. They're wanting attention, even though they haven't done anything that would deserve attention. She's playing Look at Me, and I don't have to put up with that. I recognize it and I name it, and then she wished she had sat down, and she did sit down. And then later she tried to justify what she had done, and in a small group, and they're visiting about it afterward. And I said, "Wait a minute, here's what you're doing." And I described the Look at Me thing. She said, "That wasn't what I was doing." I said, "That's what you're doing right now. You were doing it then, and you're doing it right now. You want attention. I don't have time for this."
Right.
Go read a good book.
Right. Miss Elliott, I want to ask you, how do you suggest someone handles a situation when they witness racism?
You have to step up and say, what you just did is racist. I'm writing it down. I'm having the person who was victimized by this initial this. I'm putting a date on it. And I'm taking it to people in positions of power who can do something about this. This has to stop. If those who there's a statement made by Edmund Burke, and I can't think of it right now, but I'll think of it. These things come to me eventually, probably in the middle of the night. Anybody who stands by and watches this kind of thing and doesn't do something about it is just as guilty as the person who's doing it.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah, there is no way you can say, well, it wasn't my fault, or I didn't want to make her feel bad, or that wouldn't have been a nice thing for me to do. I'm not like that. Women say to me, I couldn't do what you do because I'm not that mean. And I think, you silly fool.
Yeah.
You do that every day, that you encourage your children only to have any kind of communication with those who look like them. You do it every day. Every time you turn on television and you avoid anything that might have to do with people of color, you're teaching racism on a daily basis. Don't tell me you don't teach racism, because you are.
Yeah.
And black parents are as guilty of avoiding white people now as white people are avoiding blacks. But the reasons are different. Most white people haven't had first-hand experiences with people of other colors because they avoid them.
Right.
That's the reason there are more children attending segregated schools in the United States today than there were previous to Brown versus Board of Education. White people walk away.
Yeah.
Right.
White people get to the burbs just as fast as they can so that their children won't have to go to school with children of other colors. We put First Nations people, Native Americans, out on a res and say we're doing them a favor while we attempt to drive a Canadian pipeline through the res.
Yeah. Yes.
You see, we white people can avoid contact with those who are of other color groups. Other color groups can't do that. They can't avoid that because white people are running the show. So they know they have to be around white people. But it's a choice. For white people, it's a choice. For people of color, most color groups, it's a necessity that they be around us. White people can arrange to be around only people who look like themselves. People of color can't do it. And that's people don't realize that that's the real danger in the future. Within 30 years, white people will have lost their numerical majority in the United States of America. And white people say to me, well, when they get power, they're going to want to treat us the way we've treated them. So I say, wait a minute. If that's your concern, change the way you treat them in the present so they will treat you well in the future.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
it's a little
exactly
thing
right.
called karma.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's not karma, it's common sense.
Yes.
And people say to me, well, I believe in the golden rule. And I say, and what is the golden rule? As if I didn't know. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. In other words, treat people the way you want to be treated. Well, that doesn't work. I happen to know that tall, young, black or white man getting onto the plane who has a large piece of luggage to put in the overhead rack would not appreciate it if I said to him, can I put that up there for you?
Right.
But I really appreciate if some tall or other wise person says to me when I get on the plane, can I put your luggage up there for you? I want to be treated that way, but I know that other people don't want to be treated necessarily, don't want to be treated the way I want to be treated. I can't treat people the way I want to be treated. I don't believe in the golden rule. Now, this will go out over the airways. Oh, she's a sinner. She doesn't believe in the golden rule. I believe in the platinum rule. The platinum rule says, do unto others as others would have you do unto them.
Yes.
Right.
Treat others the way they want to be treated. And in order to find out how they want to be treated, you have to ask them. You have to listen to their answer, and then you have to do what they ask you to do if it isn't immoral, indecent, or illegal.
Yes.
It makes no sense to say to other people, I'm going to treat you the way I want to be treated. Because white people do not treat people of color the way white people want to be treated.
I agree.
You know it, and I know
witness to it.
It is, and when they use the Bible to justify what they're doing, it destroys the validity of what they've learned in the Bible.
True.
I agree. Miss Elliott, I want to ask, I've never been so infuriated as here in the past few years, abuse by police, how they are just so blatantly killing these black men, even young black boys. And they could just be walking down the road in the wrong neighborhood, sitting in a car, whatever. Do you see that there is a racial war brewing in the United States?
In my estimation, young black and brown males live in a war zone. And it isn't war made upon them by members of their color group. It's a war created by this society, prolonged by this society, and it is perpetuated by this society. Police ones get the same indoctrination that everybody else gets. And you can't expect them to leave the college classroom and become something that they haven't been taught. They are what they have been taught to be. The only way you're going to change this situation is to re-educate the police department. If I had my way, I would put every person in the police department through the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. Mm-hmm. I've done that. I've had police ones in my exercise several times, particularly in Australia. 2 young men and an older white woman, all members of the police department. I didn't know it until after it was over. And then all 3 of them agreed that it opened their eyes to the way they're behaving and the things they're doing and the way they are perceived by other people. Now, perception is everything. If people perceive you as being a racist, it's probably because you're acting like one.
Right.
If you don't want people to perceive you as being a racist, read a good book and find out what a racist looks like. Go to my website, and a woman named Judith Katz, in her book, White Awareness, published a list of typical statements that white folks make. Go to my website and read those typical statements.
Okay.
Check those that you would agree with or which you have heard in the past.
Okay.
Then go to the next page, which is clarifications of those statements. Why you ought not to be saying them. You don't remember when Jesse Jackson was running for the presidency, and all the white folks were saying, what does Jesse really want? Well, what he wanted was to be president of the United States. But if a black person wants it, there must be an ulterior motive. Mm-hmm. Well, what's Donald Trump's ulterior motive? Donald Trump's ulterior motive is he doesn't want to be president of the United States, never intended to get this far. He wants to have a good reputation to take to NBC to have another show, another television show.
Right.
This is what he's about. And anybody who has watched this fool knows what he's about. Because he can be a fool on television, and it's all right for that 40% of the Republican Party who want to follow him. It's all right for them to approve of what he's doing on television because you can turn him off. Yeah. And he doesn't have to affect the rest of your life. But if he's in the White House, then he can affect the rest of your life.
Right.
That we cannot allow to happen. What
right.
was the question?
I want to. Do you think it's okay. It's okay. Do you think racism will ever go away?
It won't go away by itself. It has to be driven out. It has to be. Hey, look. I get criticized for the exercise. People say, how could you do that to poor little white children? Oh, good Lord, give me a break. What you have to realize is we are now in a situation where you don't have to get smallpox. You don't have to get shingles. You don't have to get diphtheria. You don't have to get polio because we have inoculations against all of those diseases. Education is an inoculation against the disease of racism. If we educated properly, we could get rid of racism in 2 generations.
Wow.
But it won't happen until we start leading people out of ignorance where racism is concerned. But we could do it. Racism has not been around forever. It has been around, and if you read the book, The Myth of Race by Sussman, you realize that racism was created in this country by white people who wanted to be powerful and who wanted to maintain their power and who wanted it to be all right for them to kill off the native inhabitants of this continent. And they created racism. Anything you create, you can destroy.
Yes.
Energy is neither created nor destroyed. You can't create it, and you can transform it, but you can't create it and you can't destroy it. We can destroy racism. It's something we created, and we can destroy it if we truly chose to.
Profound.
Students who were in the first film, The Eye of the Storm, that was made in my classroom, my 3rd grade classroom, the BBC took them out to Los Angeles, 2 of them, last spring, and they did a film called The Science of the Brain or something like that. And they talked to these 2 men, who are now middle-aged men, who to this day remember what happened to them that day and talk about how it changed their lives. It literally changed their brains, because now when they see these ugly things happening, they don't automatically think, well, he's black. They automatically think, what's behind this? It has nothing. If it's about skin color, then that other guy's wrong. Let's find out what's going on here. They do not immediately jump to the conclusion that it's all the fault of the black man or the white woman.
Profound.
Because they learned in 3rd grade to think another way. And the moderator said, this is proof that we can change the brain. Just because you were born being receptive to these ugly thoughts and feelings and statements doesn't mean you have to stay that way.
Right,
we can change that. We could change racism. Of what we're teaching young black children, particularly young black boys, about white people in this country today is something we're going to have to work very, very hard to obliterate.
Right. Well, what a profound information that we have gotten today. Miss Elliott, will you please tell our listeners your website, where they can find you and where they can get some more really good information?
Well, go to my website, JaneElliott.com. Jane at JaneElliott.com, and download the printed learning materials, the typical statements, the clarifications of the typical statements, and then commitments to combat racism. There are 18 things there that you can do to deal with your own racism, because make no mistake about this, racism isn't just societal. Societies are made up of individuals. Individuals can change the level of racism in themselves, in their families, in their friends, in their classrooms, in their schools, in their communities, in their states, and in this country. And we must do that.
Yes, we must. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being on our show, Jane. We do appreciate it and appreciate everything that you're doing for this country.
Wait a minute. You have to realize that everything I know, I've learned from people of color, because white folks don't know it. Make no mistake about this. I have talked to, listened to, and read things. Frederick Douglass. People who haven't read Frederick Douglass in his statement that says, without struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom but deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. And he also said, where justice is denied, where poverty is enforced, where ignorance prevails, and where any one class is made to feel that society is an organized conspiracy to oppress, rob, and degrade them, neither persons nor property will be safe. Now, people who protest the right to black life movement had better sit down and shut up or join the movement.
I agree. Wow.
Because, hey, come on.
Yeah.
If Martin Luther King did it quietly, if he had done it noisily, we wouldn't be in this position today.
Right,
he would be dead sooner.
Right.
He'd be dead sooner. Make no mistake about that. But the Black Lives Matter group, as far as I'm concerned, are on the right track. And they have the right to continue to protest what is happening in this country, where people of all colors, not just black people, but all people of all colors, are being treated badly, because it sends the wrong message to the people in power. If I get away with treating blacks badly, I'll continue to get away with treating Native Americans badly, and then I can really do a job on Muslims, even though I can't tell whether they're Muslims unless it's by the way they dress. And what if they come over not dressing that way?
Right.
Then what are we going to do?
Right.
Yeah,
right.
you see, it's all sheer ignorance, and it is not. It is not because of white privilege. Get over that. When you talk about white privilege, what you ought to be talking about is white ignorance.
Mm.
I'm really upset with one of the people who is doing this white privilege thing, who says, the Civil War is over. Obviously, he hasn't talked Yankee in the South lately. We have done away with slavery. Obviously, he hasn't been in a maximum or even minimum security prison and seen the number of black males and brown males that are there. And he says, we have done away with segregation. He obviously doesn't understand or know that there are more children attending segregated schools in this country today than there were previous to Brown versus Board of Education. These problems have not been solved. They are being exacerbated by a black man in the White House. And not that he's a black man in the White House, but because white males are really upset about that black man being in the White House.
Yes,
I agree.
Richard Nixon said to a group of reporters, "I'm trying to save the White House for you white people."
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mm.
Yes, and everybody's favorite, Ronald Reagan, said to a group of white women reporters, the only reason we have such high unemployment in this country is because of all the women in the workplace.
Mm.
Think
Unbelievable.
about that.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. How can you be president of the United States and say the reason we have such high unemployment in this country is because of all the women in the workplace?
All right.
As if unemployed women don't count in the unemployment figures.
Wow.
I heard that and I fell out laughing. I thought, okay, this is a man who's president of the United States. What does that tell us about the rest of us?
Right.
Well, wow. Thank you. So I could keep you on here for hours.
You could have to listen to me for hours. No, your people who listen to this show, the people who listen to this show won't appreciate much of what I said. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't expect to be loved for what I say.
Yeah.
We don't either.
If you just remember the Sussman book, if you just read the Sussman book, then you won't argue with what I'm saying, because it is so obvious that somebody who had the power to make up words like Aryan and moron to support racism had lots of power. And they had lots of power because people weren't thinking.
Right.
I think it was Adolf Hitler who said the worst thing that can happen to a ruler is to have people who think.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want people to think. We want them to watch the boob tube or play with those little handheld games. And if we can keep our kids' eyes on those handheld games, in which the thing you have to do, the winner is the person who kills the most people the quickest and easiest.
Keeps everybody dumbed down, doesn't it?
Yep, dumb them down, and Marshall McLuhan warned us about this a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, getting right along, thank you very much for calling. I hope I have accomplished something here. I've written a book that is like a diary of what I have done and said and learned over the last, it'll be 50 years in 2 years since I started doing this. 50 years since we lost Martin Luther King Jr.
Right.
Imagine that.
Right.
Yeah. Now, the book is called A Collar in My Pocket, and you can get it on Amazon.
Okay. A collar in my pocket.
A collar in my pocket, because the kids had to wear collars the day they were on the bottom in the exercise during the film. And when they came back for their reunion, one of them said, as an adult, I still have that collar in my pocket. I can't get that collar in my pocket. I'll have that collar in my pocket for the rest of my life.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
I will have that link up on our website so everybody can get that, as well as links to your website and your book that's on Amazon, I promise.
Great. I'd be most delighted if you do that. Thank you.
Thank you for today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
All right, now, so before I get off of here, I want to look at my beautiful, lovely, sexy wife and tell you I'm lucky to have you, and I love you, babe.
I love you more, baby.
Well, that's a wrap for this amazing show. Now go on over to our website and download more like this one. And don't forget to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. We'll see you next time here on Same Sex Dialogue.